Tonight, can't we get right? Tonight, can't we get right?
Hi.
Hi, Santiani, how are you?
I'm great. How are you, Matt?
I'm fantastic, thank you very much. I was loving the groovy music that you had on just earlier. It was lovely. It was lovely.
Oh, have you listened to that before? It's called Get.
Oh no, I have not. But you should definitely send it over. It sounded cool. Lovely to meet you. Anyway, thanks for having me on. It's going to be exciting.
Yeah, I'm so looking forward actually for today because I think we've already touched base like a month ago to settle on this agenda. But yeah, I think the very first time when I know you, in terms of the webinar that you did with Moto.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's really crazy for me to be able to talk to you even virtually in person right now.
Oh, we're all just people behind it all. We're all just people. Yeah, Sunny and Ashley are fantastic. I love working with them, and they're absolute, firebrands of branding and creativity. They're really super pair, those two. So yeah, do a bit with them, and it's been an honor to spend time with them. So yeah, we did a webinar, didn't we? I can't remember. It was on I think it was just at the start of the COVID outbreak, and
exactly.
Yeah, we were shocked. We had like nearly 100 people join that. We just thought, oh, we'll pop something on, and might help the odd person. And then to have over 100 join us on our first kind of flurry into that was amazing. So you probably were one of them. So lovely to connect.
It's really a great webinar though. And by the way, I think since this is the very first time also for me to get to know you, I believe that some of us here may not yet really know you, what you're doing and what you've been passionate about, Matt. So why don't you try to introduce yourself to us first?
Try is a good word there. Very tricky. So who am I? Currently, my current sort of thing that I do is I help leadership teams align. That's basically what I do, and I know the subject of what we're going to talk about is going to touch on that shortly. But how do I do that? Through brand strategy, through brand thinking, basically. And so my background, I've got a bizarre roller coaster of a career background, which I won't bore you with too much, but I have a background originally in graphic design, and then I rose very quickly from executing design into strategic thinking. And then through various crazy things, I ran my own agency. We built that. I ran that for nearly 10 years, I think. And then I sold that agency. I worked for a much bigger agency, and I was a creative director there for a bit. And then I was headhunted by a corporate to go in-house to run their creative department and basically set that up for them. I did that, but corporate life didn't really suit me that well. I'm too much of a crazy kind of rebel, and then so basically what then happened was all very amicably, I took a redundancy there and set up about 2 years ago. Well, I didn't set out, to be honest, to be on my own, but I was on my own. I'd done pretty much everything at quite relatively young age, and I was like, well, what do I do now? When you're in that kind of situation, you kind of look back and you think, well, where was I at my best, right? Where did I perform really, really well? Was I the world's greatest designer? Sadly not, although I would have loved that to be the case. Although I'm all right. I can, I understand typography and colors and stuff, but that wasn't really where I was at my best. Where people were really knocking on the door to work with Matt Davies was in my brand strategy workshops, my facilitation skills that I'd built up over 10, 15 years, and the ability to really engage with high-level execs. And I realized, hey, that's where my sweet spot is. And so I was approached by a number of people as I was on my own at that point. I wasn't really sure what to do. And someone said, Matt, why don't you come be and consult for us? And I thought, in my head, a consultant is 50, 60 years old, and they're very wise, and and then I look back and I thought, maybe they've done a lot. Usually consultants have a lot of experience, and I was like, oh, hang on, maybe that is me now. Maybe I am the old guy and slowly getting older, and maybe, okay. So I've been doing that for about two years now, and absolutely loving it. I tend to work on long-term sort of projects, maybe about 6 months. And I tend to work for a CEO or some sort of maverick leader who knows something's wrong and wants to change something in their organization, but for whatever reason, they need someone with a beard who's English, who's quite polite, who can basically come in and excite and inspire the leadership team. And the way I do that is through brand thinking. And it's been fantastic so far. I've had loads of different clients. I mean, over my career, I've worked with hundreds and hundreds of clients. But since going out alone, I've had big corporates like Nestle I've worked with, who are, the chocolate brand, right through to kind of startups. So I do a full spectrum. And really, it's all about helping people set their strategy, unite them, align them, using brand, and then if I'm lucky enough and they like me enough, I often get asked to stick around to help them implement that strategy. That's me. That was the worst pitch I've ever done, by the way. That was really not succinct. Sorry about that, but there we go.
No worries.
That's
but wow, what a ride. And I maybe like becoming a brand consultant and also doing your strategic workshops and etc. is your higher purpose. So you don't really need to be old to be wise, right?
No. Although I am getting old, to be fair, but we'll move on. We'll move on from that.
Awesome. So, wow, I didn't realize that you came from a graphic design background, but yeah, I think maybe...
I don't do any design now. I literally have left all of that behind. Like, I can do it, but, I think the value as really, I don't know if any graphic designers are tuning in right now, but I know I do a podcast actually with a guy called Jacob Cass. Some of you have heard of him.
The podcast, sorry.
Yeah.
Good job.
Well, thank you. Yeah, just thought I'd drop that in there. But it's called Just Branding. And one of the things we're doing is, Jacob is really interesting because he's on a journey from graphic design into strategy. And he's kind of taking the journey that I took, but I took it maybe 8 years ago, 10 years ago, and he's sort of on that journey now. And what you find is there's a lot of pain for designers out there who realize they're being sort of commoditized. And with the rise of technology, everybody thinks they're a designer, right? Everybody thinks that they can knock up a quick leaflet or whatever. And so it's true that the value of design, sadly, from that perspective is coming down. But what I would say is that once you think like a designer, you don't just stick to graphic design or I know you guys do like animation and all that stuff. That's a need, and definitely there's value in that. But the real value is in how you think, right? As a designer. And so as a designer, we can imagine a better future and help people get there. And so all I've done is taken those principles of design and simplifying and communication and creativity and packaged it in a way that is perhaps a little bit more valuable to businesses than just the logo or just the leaflet or something like that. And looked at the bigger, you can then look at the bigger problems. And then if you can solve big problems, you can get paid more, which is lovely. But also it's more fun. Anyway, I gabble. Forgive me. You guide me because I'm the worst. I can talk really badly. So you must discipline me.
No, it's okay. Just like I'll prefer to hear from you like your train of thoughts rather than my point of view. But anyway, I think what brings us here today is the topic that you just now mentioned, which is strategic alignment. And we are going to specialize it on branding and maybe the leadership and everything else. So Matt, maybe before we start, I think I'll just give like a short introduction to the background study here based on my perception about brand alignment, which I haven't really dived into it. So this is going to be something that I will learn as well. So so some people say that if your brand is aligned internally and each of your executives and your employees and your partners has a clear understanding of why your brand exists in terms of the promise it makes to the customer. And if your brand is aligned externally, your customers will understand the claims that your brand is making and believe it's making good on those claims. So it has to be related somehow. But I think in this sense, brand alignment is the very definition as well to connect with brand authenticity. And I believe that you are hype about the brand truth kind of thing. And I believe authentic brands needs to understand themselves like at the deepest level and act in accordance with that understanding. And brand promise has to be genuine and has to seek actions so that that promise will be delivered. So I think brand alignment isn't something that is like a one-time scheme, but it works alongside with managing your established brands and also running the venture of the business. So I think that's the overall thing about brand alignment. But I think right now you can deep dive into it, and
there's so much. There's so much.
I just I just want to listen to you. Like, what's your perspective?
So you know, have you come across this phrase "wicked problems" before? I don't know if you've come across that as a phrase, a wicked problem. So a wicked problem is a problem that basically is very, very complicated, and it requires a lot of skills, a lot of thinking, and a lot of pieces to come together to solve, right?
Yeah.
And I think what we are kind of dealing with in the modern era that we exist in is a lot of wicked problems, right? One of the biggest kind of problems, I believe, and in my experience, that organizations have, particularly as they scale and particularly when they're big, but even when they're small, it can still be an issue, is this question of aligning everybody, right? Pointing everybody in the same direction. And if you kind of have that alignment, everybody can work together towards executing on a very simple goal. And that's really what we need to do. We need to create customers. We need to help them overcome their challenges. And then we win, right? But what tends to happen is human nature comes into play, right? And what happens is that businesses become misaligned. And by that, what I mean is they start dabbling over here and dabbling over there, and somebody goes off and starts an initiative over there, all very well intended. But then what happens is, unless somebody kind of keeps pulling everybody back together, they splinter off, and you get different imperatives. And as time goes on, people come, people go, people forget. They're not so committed to the core. It's not communicated simply enough. And so businesses can get themselves in an absolute mess. And even really big businesses, they find this a huge challenge, whereby people they give lip service to the strategy, like, oh yeah. But it's interesting, right? Because before coming on here, I just sort of dived and did a little bit more research into this. And there's a few studies that really kind of indicate that this is a huge problem. So for example, like there's a Harvard Business Review that was done. I think it was done last year. I can drop you a link later. It references a survey that was done by 4,000 managers, right? And surprisingly, after interviewing 4,000 managers, only 28%, that's like 30% of them, could actually reference more than 3 of their firm's strategic priorities that year. So wow. That's unbelievable, right? And they couldn't remember them all, right? And so when you think about that, you realize, like, alignment's a massive issue, right? Because people are in the day-to-day, they're doing the short-term stuff, and the big picture is often not thought about much. So what's the what's the solution, I guess, to this kind of chaos of misalignment? And my view is going back to our initial introduction, is basically brand becomes that answer. Okay, if you do it properly. So just one thing I always like to point out, when I'm talking about brand, just for the sake of our listeners, I know you know this, but I'm not talking about a logo and fonts. That is definitely not what I'm talking about. So my definition of brand is the meaning that people attach to you and your offer, right? So your brand is the meaning people attach to you. It kind of exists in their hearts and in their minds, right? You don't really own the brand. All you can do is what we call branding, which is the attempt to manage that meaning. So we can send out the right signals, we can design the right experiences, we can create the right products, we can do the right research, right? And through all of our activities and our operations and our HR and our customer experience and our employee experience, all of that, right? Yes. All of those signals create meaning in our audience's hearts and minds. And the attempt of branding is to manage that. But that's a huge task. It's a huge challenge because there's so much complexity. There's so many wicked problems. There's so many moving parts. So how do you do it? Well, I believe it always starts with the leadership. So when we're talking about alignment, It's got to
Yeah.
start at the top. And that's often where I'm wheeled in, right? Because somebody's looked at their leadership team and they think, yeah, we're all pulling in different directions. Maybe the original team that started the company, maybe some people have moved on, maybe new people have joined, maybe they give lip service to it, but then when in their actions, they're starting initiatives or they're speaking in ways that don't kind of join together. And if you let that carry on over time, like, it's a mess, and then I get called in to have to fix it, so it's a nightmare. So I'd rather people don't do it in the first place and set themselves up right. It makes life a lot easier. So how do you do that? And this is the thing. I would say, I use this phrase, that brand is like the Trojan horse to bring alignment. So if you have a great idea of why you exist, who you exist to serve, and why you're different and why that matters, just those very simple questions, and your leadership team, first of all, create that and engage with it and commit to that. Then you cascade that out through a number of things, which we can get into in a minute, through how you treat your employees, the culture that you build, how you then create customer experiences, and the way that customers interact with you, and how you design those experiences, the feeling and the emotions that they get. You know, you need to be checking in with that. You need to be creating stuff that aligns to that higher purpose, right? There's a little phrase I like to just drop in. That once you do that, that is the gel, the glue, if you like, that sticks the high level, big picture stuff to the firefighting on the ground, the day-to-day building, right? So if you don't have that and you don't spend time on that big picture, long-term stuff, you can easily get lost and people shoot off in different directions. And it does start with your leadership and then it cascades down. But it isn't just a top down. You also have to have stuff so that the people at the bottom can inform what's going on at the top. So it's a two-way thing. It's not just the leadership telling everybody. There's got to be truth to the whole thing. So just quickly on truth, because I know you mentioned it. For me, that's where all this comes from, right? So as a designer, I used to get a graphic designer. I used to get so annoyed, really annoyed. And it still upsets me now when, you know, you get asked as a designer to maybe create a brochure, a website, whatever it might be. And you're working with copywriters and you're creating a look and feel. And, you know, if you know that that doesn't kind of adhere to reality, it's a lie, right? And we all know that in this era that we live in, social media and so on, we can't lie to people anymore because they will find out, right? Employees will go somewhere else. They'll go on LinkedIn. They'll go on Twitter. Customers will broadcast the lie out there. You cannot lie anymore. And so what we have to do is find ways to be true, to tell the truth, to be honest. And so if we're saying, for example, that, you know, we are here to improve the planet, right, in our particular category, and we're then sourcing materials from places which, you know, and basically suppliers that really are damaging the planet, that's a lie. We need to fix that. And so what I tend to do is work with exec teams to hold them accountable and help them hold themselves accountable to some of the stuff that they are claiming and they all want, but sometimes it's hard to execute. So I'll give you one little tool. I'll drop a quick tool here and then I'll be quiet and let you move us on. But one tool I love to do, right, you'll love this, is a lot of companies have values, right? And we can take the mick out of values. And most of the time they don't use them, right? They're just words that they slap on a wall, right? I say to people, let's use them. So I get the exec team in, the C-suite, and, you know, anyone else that's relevant, and I put the values in the middle on a whiteboard. Here's our values, and then I divide the group. So there's usually people focused within the organization, such as HR people, maybe operations people, maybe even finance. They're kind of focused within, so they go over on one side. And then I get people focused without. So you might have your sales people, your marketing people, those types of people, customer service, what it might be. They're focused without. Right. So then what we do is we go through all the values and I say, prove, if I'm a customer, what proof points have I got that you really value this thing that you claim that you value? I don't know. Let's take a classic, innovation. So I'm a customer. How are you proving to me that you actually, you know, value that? And if I'm an employee and I sit on the front desk, or I'm a grad, or I'm a manager, you know, how are you proving that to me, that you value that we as a brand value that? And if we have any gaps as you go through, we need to do some work, because we're lying to ourselves, to everybody. So proof points, let's prove it. And so that's the sort of thing that we need to do to help stick the strategy and the thinking of the strategy to reality. Anyway, that's just a little idea. So I'll let you move me on. I know I talk a lot, so if you want to interrupt me, please do. I don't mind.
No, it's okay. Because like everything you said is very insightful, and I think it's also a new thing for me to hear about it. I do agree. I think okay. So the one thing that everybody has been starting doing was like set up the brand values, and maybe what we help as an agency here is to align them with purpose. So maybe something that I would like to ask. Oh, just now I was saying that my company tagline was inspired by truth and driven by purpose, because I believe that if you don't have authenticity, I wouldn't bother to brand your brand if you don't believe in your brand and why your product becomes like, I mean, help other people to improve their lives. And yeah, that's something that is what we are trying to do, how to turn purpose into performance. Because a lot of companies here also they have a purpose, but then they don't know what to do with it. Like how do we need like to span like 10 years to see like if this purpose gonna come alive? But actually from the very starting point, purpose is not just a statement, but it's also aligned with your positioning as well, right? Well, anyway, that's a different type of thing to say. But
well, let me just dive into that just very quickly. We won't talk about positioning too much, but purpose, right, is an interesting one. Like, it's so crucial in my view to align people internally. Like, there's a lot of research. There's a guy called Brian Sharp. There's Mark Ritson. Some really kind of intelligent people who almost poo-poo purpose a little bit. They're like, it doesn't matter so much from a consumer perspective. And there's a lot of evidence to suggest that consumers, right, ultimately, they kind of like a bit of purpose, but most, you know, they're not really that fussed, which we hate to hear, right? Because I love Simon Sinek and Start With Why, and yeah, come on. But what I think people like Sharp and Ritson might have been missing a little bit is that purpose is crucial to aligning your employees, to making sure that you can get all of your company pushing in one direction, right? So without purpose, we're just wandering around like aimlessly, right? Just trying to make money. No. That is no good for anyone. And I think particularly for millennials, Generation Z, you know, we need purpose so that we feel connected to what we're doing. So it's really important. So I think purpose is crucial, mainly from a cultural perspective. But then if you affect that correctly, you know, you design your employee experience around it, you recruit, you onboard, you train, you get brand thinking at every stage of that. Then when you get to the customer and somebody comes into contact, a customer comes into contact with one of your people, suddenly it becomes something highly valuable, because your employee knows how to behave, is consistent with the customer expectation and the promises that they've been made, and they get a way better experience, right? So we have to have purpose, absolutely crucial, straight up there at the top. And again, it has to start with the leadership team, right? If someone's purpose is only to make money, that's really short-sighted, and it's great for them. You know, sometimes I go in, particularly earlier in my career, like, you know, Mr. Businessman, Mrs. Businesswoman, like, what's your purpose? Well, our purpose is to turn over £10 million in the next 3 years. Really? Great for you. But no one else cares about that. Like what? The employees don't care that you want to make more money, right? The employees get paid their salary whether you make that or not. The customers certainly don't care. So we need another reason. And this is where, you know, I talked at the start of this about brand being in the hearts and minds of the customer. Because what we have to start to do, and what we fail often to do, is to look at things from the customer's perspective. So we have to really understand, like, who we're serving, the tribe, right? And we have to sit in their shoes. We have to stand in their shoes, and we have to understand their pain, their challenges, their goals. And those things may change from time to time. So we have to keep checking in with it, because technology changes, their social context might change. Look at coronavirus, right? You know, if we're here to serve, you know, single mums, suddenly coronavirus hits, there's a whole load of new challenges for, you know, if you're in lockdown as a single mum, suddenly you've got your kids with you, you're trying to work. Now, brands that are, you know, that understand their customers, that empathize, that have good relationships, or at least systems where they can listen to what the customer's saying, they're the ones that can pivot quickly to help that tribe, to help their audience, to offer things, whatever that might be, support, help, you know, to help them. And they're the ones that will really succeed. If you're just sat there thinking, well, I'm here to make money, and oh, coronavirus has hit, you know, oh, how can we make more money? And your messaging and all of your kind of your products, they're all designed around money making, you're going to not do very well. It's got, the whole tide has shifted from, the power is not now in the business's hands, the power is in the customer's hands. And we have to accept that. And so we have to design our businesses around that. And that's where I think we struggle a bit. Anyway, that's my thought.
That's very good. Yeah. So it's crazy here in Indonesia if you compare, I believe, in like countries such as UK or maybe USA, because our comprehending part here about branding is still very, very new. So even, just to give them a nudge about like the whole branding process is already too much. So if we
probably blown too many people's minds already.
So anyway, maybe we can start with like, what do you think? Like if we already have a business and a brand, what are the signs like that business has a brand alignment problem?
Sure.
Some signs.
Well, I think the quick answer is they don't really understand why they exist, right? Anybody, even, or they have different views on why they exist. If I ask one leader or one employee, they give me one answer, and then if I ask another, they give me another answer. They don't know who they really exist to serve, and they don't know why they're different. So they're three questions they don't really know the answers to. But in terms of symptoms, what you might start seeing in a business like that is basically people pulling in different directions. One leader starting an initiative over there, training program or something. One leader setting up a department in another part of the world. You know, all sorts of crazy things happening, and no one really is sure why that's happening or what's going on. So a lot of sort of siloed behavior, a lot of activity. So that's a massive symptom. I call it splintered symptoms. It's kind of like people just all off doing their own thing. They're all very well intended, and they're all trying to do the right thing, but there's nothing really pulling everything together. So the other thing I think tends to happen with businesses like that is they become very short-term focused, and so they start selling like on a commodity because they've not thought bigger than, I've got a product, I want to sell you the product. What they haven't done is thought, what's the problem with the customer? How can I really build something that's of high value to that customer? So what then happens is, I'm selling you my product, and then there's another competitor in the market, they're selling a similar product, and so we're just fighting on price. So if you're a business and you feel that you're getting commoditized, it's because you're not different enough. And the reason you're not different enough is because you haven't really thought bigger about your purpose and about how you create really something meaningful and inspirational that people want to pay more money for. So that's another symptom. Another one is there's no difference in the marketplace. You look exactly the same as your competition. I could look at 10 of your competitors and you'll all be using the same colors, the same stock library photos on your website. You'll all be saying the same stuff. It's just dull. You know, you don't have a point of view that's different. You need that to stand out, to create value. And I guess kind of, finally, your comms, your communications, both internally and externally, they're kind of aimless. They're sort of very short term. Maybe they're sort of just for the sake of putting something out there. There's nothing to say. So all of those things say to me, if I come across a client like that, look, guys, you know, you have to get brand thinking up into your boardroom. You need to shake it up. You need to look at yourselves in the mirror and think, what are we getting out of bed in the morning to do, right? You can make money in any way, right? but surely you want to get out of bed and make money in a meaningful way, in a way that you can look back on when you're 70 years old and say, I was proud of what I built here. We did something spectacular. We changed the world somehow. We helped so many people. Like some of the clients I've worked with, they're saving lives, you know, like amazing. So I always think there's a classic story, right? Have you heard of that story where I can't remember who it is, but somebody goes to NASA and they see a guy sweeping the floor and they say to him, oh, what are you doing? And this guy is sweeping the floor and he says, I'm helping put a man on the moon, right? So you've got a janitor who's connected to the higher purpose of the brand. That's what you need. You need people to be inspired. Like, even though I'm sweeping the floor, even though I'm a grad on your front desk, I'm helping people to feel better. I'm saving people's lives. I'm putting a man on the moon. And that is when you know you've got it right and everybody's pulling in the direction. But to do that, you actually have to simplify everything. And it has to be true. And you've got to start aligning your leadership team. And that's the trick. You've got to get brand in the boardroom. You mustn't push brand down into the marketing department. No. Brand's way more precious than that. There is a marketing element to it, but there's this internal element that we've been talking about. There's a cultural element and there's a leadership element. And leaders, in my view, need to really take that seriously. So so get purpose up there, get brand thinking up there. That's my sort of preaching, if you like.
Very good. Yeah, I do really agree. Like the janitor has, I think if you want to have a purpose, or let's say a higher purpose, or maybe higher values of what you're doing, even to the least person in your company needs to know their existence there is significant to the company, even though like the smallest stuff, because like you said just now, they feel like they're in a part and contributing to the larger purpose in the company. And
they call it the execution gap, right? So if you because we've mainly been talking about having a brand strategy, about understanding who you are, why you exist, what you're trying to do, but there's the next stage, which I think you touched on earlier, which is, okay, so we've got a brand, we know why we exist, we've got a great purpose, it's inspired, it's great fun, and we're really excited about it. But how now do we actually put that into practice? That's the big question. And so often, even businesses that have the brand strategy, not that many do it very well, but if they do, then the next question is we're over here right now, we're not executing against that. So there's this gap, right? And in the gap, that's where design thinking and design comes in, because then you have to very purposefully, very thoughtfully do a variety of things. And every business is different, so it's difficult to give specific advice. But on the two fronts, really, you've got to listen to your employees and empower your employees. So you've got to onboard them, you've got to recruit them properly, you've got to onboard them properly, you've got to give them the space to do a great job, and then you need to hold them accountable, against what we're all trying to do. So set targets, set goals, all that stuff. But at the same time, you can't be super short-sighted about that, because we've got to have the brand, the long-term brand in. So everything has to ladder up to the bigger brand purpose. So if you've got an initiative and you can't see how that ladders into your bigger brand purpose, you've got a problem, because your employees are going to think, well, we're saying we're here to save lives, but I can't see how this thing I'm doing has any connection to that. And all this is just lip service, and truth doesn't exist. And that's a problem. So you've got to really connect with your employees, but you've also got to connect with your customers. You've got to create those experiences, and you have to listen to what they're saying, their goals, their challenges, and how you're actually helping them. And so those two things, customers internally and employees internally and customers externally, that's how you join it together. You've got to kind of set those up and design how those things work. So I don't know if that kind of answers your question, but that's how I think that you need to start thinking.
It really answered the question. And I think, like you said, design is about how you translate your statements into doing. And maybe I would love to hear, like, do you have, I mean, you have worked across time with a lot of like huge brands and maybe from the small corporations to the big ones. Like, what kind of an effective strategy brand alignment model that you maybe can give us?
Really interesting. Yeah, they're
Yeah.
all different. I mean, I'm working on one right now, which is really interesting, which I think is fantastic, really, because what I'm all about is trying to hold leadership teams accountable to what they say, right? So I worked with this leadership team, and they came out with you know, a great purpose, a great vision for the world, and we were looking at it, and we boiled it down into four key things, around 4 buckets, if you like, of what they want, of things they wanted to achieve. So their purpose was a massive one. The planet was another one. Their profit was one. They needed to make profit to fuel the others, right? And their people, right? So we called it the quadruple bottom line, right? Strategy, right? So in each of those buckets, they all laddered into their purpose and it all, you know, and their values. But really, where all of these 4 things, people, planet, purpose, and profit, came together was where they performed their best. And so what they decided to do, which I think was remarkable, and we're still in the process of doing this, is set themselves measurable targets in each of those 4 areas. So, you know, around their carbon footprint for the planet, around their people and their engagement levels with their people, and on the people front, on their profit. Obviously, every company has profit targets, but also not just on that, on how they could reinvest some of that profit. So it was really purpose driven. And so when you kind of get all of those things together, you know, I'm an employee, I work for them. And once I understand that the initiative that I'm driving against here is in this bucket, as it were, maybe on the people front. And then at the end of the year, the CEO gets up and he says, look, guys, we've hit this. This is really important. It's hit our, you know, and this is how it ladders into our purpose. That's super, super powerful. So that's simplifying. I think we can get really complicated in terms of models and what we're doing. But ultimately, what you've got to do is you've got to really answer those 3 questions that I said at the beginning. Why do we exist beyond making money? Who do we exist to serve? And really knuckle and zone in on those customers. And then why are we different from everybody else? And then from that, you then need to hold yourself accountable, set the targets, set the goals, and make sure that you're designing your own system. So in other words, if your leadership team says, yeah, we're going to do this, like, okay, well, what are the routines that you as a leadership team are going to go through? So you're going to meet every quarter, for example. And when you meet every quarter, what are you reporting against, you know, in terms of the brand? So if you've got 4 initiatives, like the example I just gave, you can really clearly say, yeah, we're on track with this. We're doing really well here, or we need to pull our socks up on this front. You know, so I think it's really important in regards to making stuff happen, to hold yourselves accountable. Brand is not just a set of words that we slap on a wall or some values that we put in the bottom of our desks. These are things that have to cascade through the way that we work with employees, how we're holding them accountable, their review systems, their kind of things that need to be you know, put into targets and translated into reality so we can measure it. So I've got 3 key areas that I normally suggest with people in terms of how once we've got that strategy, once we've answered those 3 questions with a lot of research and a lot of authenticity, how then do we begin to start putting that into practice? Well, I always sit down with the HR people, right? Because the HR people are the ones that have a huge amount of power in regards to making stuff happen. So you need to talk to them about how they're going to reward people or allow people to be rewarded, both formally and informally, right? So you might say to managers, informally, for example, managers, here's a budget that you can spend on beers with your team, but we really need you to only spend that when somebody within the team has exhibited a value, one of the brand values, and then we want, you know, maybe they've stayed late to go over and above to help a difficult situation for a client. When that happens, here's £50, $50, whatever. Take the team out, celebrate that person, right? and the company will sponsor that, but it's informal. It's kind of left down grassroots. They can do it. Or maybe another one that I found really fantastic that I came across was a company that had this system where I could nominate. Say I was nominated for exhibiting a value, right? I get some vouchers for a shop or something, and then it's my turn over the next week to nominate somebody else, a colleague that I've seen exhibit some of the values of the brand. So I nominate you, right? And I say, right, I nominate you for exhibiting the brand value of kindness or something, or whatever we want to do. And then that goes in the newsletter, and you get a voucher, and then it's your turn. So what that does is it creates stories, it creates meaning, it becomes more meaningful, but it's grassroots. It's not the managers saying, this is what we must do. It's kind of a peer-to-peer thing. And then there's, of course, formal rewards. So, you can have a yearly thing and celebrate various, in an award ceremony or whatever you want to do. Then there's routines. So the first one's rewards, the next one's routines. So in terms of the routines of your people, you've got to think about how you're recruiting them. We call it employer branding. Like, how are we attracting the right people that believe what we believe? How are we setting them up for success? How are we onboarding them, explaining the brand, explaining our expectations? What about appraisals? And the kind of the rituals that we do as a company. Do we do town hall presentations? And when we do a town hall presentation to all our people, are we talking about the brand, or are we talking about our short-term stuff? How are we linking the day-to-day with the big purpose? And that is a leadership thing. And finally, point 3 is something that I do is called reminders. So we can slap the words on the wall, but is there anything more meaningful that we can do from a reminder perspective? Maybe one really cool thing I often think about is artifacts. So if you think about the military, a lot of military academies, for example, if you go into the headquarters or whatever, they'll have like, memorabilia from great battles, right? And on plinths, like a soldier's helmet or something, and there'll be memorabilia. Now, as you walk past that as a soldier, it inspires you because you connect that artifact with the higher purpose, and suddenly it gives you a sense of pride, a sense of meaning. So there's things like that corporations can do, but they have to be authentic. You can't just create these things. They've got to be like maybe something from the CEO's own personal story. Maybe it's his first ever stapler or her first ever stapler or something, and it becomes a symbol of success and overcoming the worst challenges in life or whatever. I don't know. And every time they go on stage, they bring their stapler to talk about, when I used this back in the day, I never thought I'd be here, or whatever it might be. I don't know. So you can find those kind of really nice, neat little stories that you can begin to tell. So that's kind of an internal alignment piece that I think you really need to do to connect with your strategy. And of course, externally to customers, you need to make sure your story's correct, your creative, your look and feel, your short-term marketing initiatives, all of that has to be in line. Everything has to sync. But I can't sort of talk too much about all of that in just this short time. But I hope that kind of gives a bit of a flavor in regards to what I would suggest. You need a strategy internally, you need a strategy externally, and it all has to ladder up to the core questions that I've mentioned.
Wow, it's something new that I've heard, the 3 R's just now, and I think it's very interesting because I don't think almost every company does that, and it's a model. It's really answering the question just now, and I believe a lot of people that can take away from this, Matt. And let me just take a break to answer a question here for you. I think there's somebody here that is explaining something from Eddie Galaxy. He said that sometimes we act as a mediator between top level and down level, where there are clashes about corporate culture and organizational goals. So he said it happened especially when an old company is on their journey or brand transformation. And his question is, what is the right approach and standpoint that we have to take at this situation?
So he's saying, just so I understand the question, he's saying they act as a mediator between top down and this clashes with the actual culture
Yeah.
in the organization. And so it sounds to me like it's a problem where the leadership are flying up high, and everybody else is like, we don't understand this. We're trying to deal with the day-to-day issues. So yeah, that's a challenge. And I guess that what that talks to me about is it's called change management, right? It's where the leadership suddenly are going, right, we're going to do this, and everyone else is stuck in the past. And that is a massive challenge. Like, I've got quite a few clients that are in that area where they've realized, like, hey, like, you know, we need to change, but maybe our people aren't ready for that change. And so you have to be incredibly patient in regards to that. So what would I suggest? Huge emphasis on internal communications, huge emphasis on management training for middle managers by the HR teams, simple but clear. So in other words, like, for example, you would say, right, we are going to do weekly one-to-ones. Every people manager is expected to have a one-to-one for 15 minutes with every member of their team, right? Just, that's a thing now. If you can't cope with that, let us know. We'll free up some more space. We'll figure that out, right? So we'll put a plan in place to help you if you can't manage that from a time perspective. But when you do those one-to-ones, this is the design of how we want you to run them, right? And here's some tips. You know, we want you to talk about how that person is exhibiting the brand values, how they're connecting their work to the higher purpose of the company and the bigger initiatives here, and how they connect to why the company exists in the first place. And if that's a problem, we then need to empower managers to be able to get rid of the dead wood, right? Because those people are slowing us down. But all of that, you can't just do tomorrow, right? It takes a few months. I would even say even a year to be able to build something that that was sort of very authentic and actually gives people the space and the time and the managers the time to get their head around it. But the most important thing is you also reward people who do it really, really well. So you incentivize it, and you maybe there's one team and you say, right, we're going to, at the end of the year or in 6 months, we're going to look at all of the people managers, and we're going to reward the one that we think is doing the best job. And they're all going to go off to Ibiza or whatever. I don't know, maybe not in coronavirus, but, you know, they're going to get a Netflix voucher. I don't know, whatever. And we're going to champion them, and we're going to thank them for all their hard work and give other people something to look up to. So there's some ideas of what you could potentially do. But yeah, it is a challenge if the leadership team are suddenly all in sync and are like, wow, we're going to go over here. They have to cascade that down. One other thing that I talk about a lot is storytelling. And one of the things I tend to do with exec teams is help them align around how they're going to communicate the new strategy to the company. And the best way to communicate, the best way to create meaning in people's minds is through stories, both to consumers, but also internally to employees. And so principles of storytelling and an alignment to a very simple beginning, middle, end of a story. Where are we going? Where are we now? And what are the resistances and the challenges that we're going to face, but are going to be well worth us overcoming? That a leadership team needs to align around that story and tell it, whether it's in a one-to-one, relaxed, you know, and just talking to their managers, or whether they're on stage talking to the whole company. All of these things, they need to have a really clear picture of the story and the journey that they're on. So that's another sort of thing. So I hope that kind of helps. So initiatives and actually designing and empowering your employees, but also leadership storytelling and communication, internal comms, etc. Super important as well in a situation like that.
Wow, that's so good. Like, I think it's easier for the higher level to empower and also be a little bit try to slower their pace, so that all the organization people can somehow join on the board, and how it's not just organization, it's like organism, it's a companies that needs to bring together with a rhythm. And like you said, it doesn't take like one instant thing to finish it, like in one day everybody got their hat on the same plates, but it's ongoing thing. Like, it has to be repetitive, it has to be regular, like, so
you have to design it. You have to design it. And and the thing I would say is that it's human nature, right? And even if you've done it this year, like in 2 or 3 years time, you know, people come and go. Human nature is the way it is. Somebody thinks, well, I want to do it this way. and off they go. You have to keep pulling them back together. You have to keep saying, guys, like, you know, let's join up. So that's why I'm a massive fan of like leadership away days, really getting brand thinking, re-challenging the way that you think about your brand, really questioning, like, are we actually truthful in regard to what we're claiming, you know? And that's the big question. Because if we're not, our employees are going to leave. They're going to get annoyed with us. Our customers are certainly going to leave because they're not going to have the experiences they expect. So brand truth, that's what it's all about. But it's so easy to say, so hard to do.
Yeah. Wow, I think we need another session to speak about brand truth only, Matt.
All right. Yeah, sorry. I know I jump around. I have a very strange, like, ADHD brain, so I just jump all over the place.
that's maybe a continue point after this.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, we can do this like anytime, anyway. But okay, we only have 5 more minutes left.
Is that right? I've been having such a blast. I'm so sorry.
No, don't be sorry. Because like Instagram will kick us off from the screen after 1 hour. But I don't know. Do you have more time, or do you want us to stop at 5 more minutes?
I prefer to stop this time, but I'm happy to do another session with you. I've just got a bit of work on today, so it would be helpful to stop. But happy to do another session in a few weeks or something if people thought there was value in that. What kind do you want to finish up with?
Okay, so I think maybe to summarize one thing here, like we touch on the brand alignment, how to maintain it in the long run.
Yeah, it's going to come back down to that answer. Well, one word: design. Right? Design the way ahead. Design the routines. Design the processes. Align the people to the processes. And but that takes huge leadership and confidence in a small group of, I call them the SWAT team, right? You have to either all the leaders get together and do this, or they empower with some leaders in it, a kind of a SWAT team that goes and sorts this stuff out and is accountable to it and reports back to the leadership team or the board or the stakeholders, whatever it might be. So you've got to kind of hold yourselves accountable. Design those things. So yeah, we can imagine where we might be in 5 years' time, but we need to then check in every quarter on this subject, and these are the measurables that we're going to kind of look at. These are the metrics. So for example, if we're saying we're going to be green, we're going to look after the planet. All right, that's great. What does that really mean? If you're going to say you're going to be carbon neutral, right? How are you measuring that? Are you going to get an independent contractor to come in to hold you accountable to that? And how often are they going to report? So if they report once a quarter on the third Monday of that month, are you going to then meet on the Friday of that month to review the results and then to put into action changes? So you need to think all of that through, and it's complex. But if you simplify it down into 4 or 5 things, and you ladder all of those 4 or 5 things into your purpose, it becomes a lot easier. So simplification, design, routines, that's my answer.
Very good. So you mean like we have to somehow measure the impact, like continuously? Because like that's not something that's very common here though, like measuring your brand impact.
No, and you've got to listen to customers, right? So, design your questions to customers and set up a process whereby you are either, research companies exist for a reason. So you can either get a research company, or when I worked for a corporate, like I worked at Capital One, who were a big kind of credit card company. We had an actual unit down in London where we would invite focus groups in regularly, and we'd be checking in with them. And some of the questions you ask, you don't just ask why do we exist? You'll be asking things like, of these different brands, which one would you go to most to solve your problem? You might ask, how recognizable do you take your logos off your adverts and put them up and just say, do you recognize this product? Things like that. So you're looking at recall, recognition, you're looking at favorability, and you're listening to the problems. But all of that research, all of that listening kind of is rear view. You also have to look forward. You need to talk to them about where they are going, your customer, your tribe is going, and how you're going to then invent. So then product innovation comes into play. So brand is huge. When you look at brand properly and managing meaning, it's massive. Yes. And so but the key thing is on how you've named your business, which is Higher Purpose. You need to first have that and make sure it's genuine, and then everything else ladders into that, and you design the whole business around your brand purpose.
Wow, thank you for wrapping that up. I think okay, it's 2 minutes left, but I just want to appreciate and really thank you, Matt, for your time, for sharing your very insightful perspectives on this subject.
My pleasure.
And yeah, and I wish you all the best and all the luck for your current job and future. I hope one day I can go there and somehow.
Yeah, it'll be brilliant. Well, that would be lovely. We can have some English tea together.
Wow, nice. I love teas. Cool. So, I think next time we can arrange again, and it will be very exciting because I also want to know about the brand truth stuff. Maybe one thing, I think I forgot to introduce your book. You read it.
My book. Oh, yeah, that's fine. So if you needed a bit of incitement around this, so using, I talked about storytelling. So one of the really cool things I think is when you get a leadership team together and you talk about their brand story. Somehow they're used to talking in spreadsheets and numbers and really dull things, right? But if you explain to them, like, the way customers and employees almost see the brand is a character in their story, and you think about it from a storytelling perspective, suddenly it gets much more inspirational and much more exciting. So my book, Storyatogy, it's on Amazon. I can drop a link later. It's 6 steps on how to create a brand strategy through the power of storytelling. And it basically goes through a lot of the things that we've talked about today, but in much more depth. So it's build a contract. Very kind of you to say that. They just said the book is brilliant. I just got that in there. Thank you.
Tonight, can we get right? Tonight, can we get right?